Welcome to Wisdom for Your Day. Sit back and get ready to gain some knowledge about the birth of a nation. In 1776, 13 American colonies formally severed ties with Great Britain. By removing a king, they created an immediate power vacuum. Their first attempt at self-rule, the Articles of Confederation, established a government too weak to function. It couldn't manage trade or effectively raise revenue. The early leaders faced a brutal dilemma. They needed a central authority strong enough to govern the nation, but they were deeply suspicious of placing too much authority in the hands of any single person. What kept them up at night wasn't an invading army, it was factionalism, the inevitable tendency for political groups to prioritize their own self-interest over the health of the republic. They knew ambitious individuals would naturally try to hoard authority. James Madison recognized this flaw in human nature. He argued that if men were angels, no government would be necessary. A functional state cannot rely on the moral perfection of its leaders. It has to be built with mechanical resistance to human ambition. A republic doesn't endure by electing flawless politicians. It survives through an engineered system designed to turn political friction and conflict into a structural safeguard. The Constitution, ratified in 1788, is an engineering schematic for a government defined by its limits. The authority of the federal government is divided into three equal branches. The legislative branch drafts the laws, the executive branch enforces those laws, and the judicial branch interprets them. This creates a system of checks and balances. The branches are built to constantly collide. The president can veto Congress, Congress can impeach the president, and the courts can strike down laws. The gridlock is intentional. That friction expands outward through a concept called federalism. The Constitution deliberately splits authority between the national government and the individual states. What the federal government cannot control, local jurisdictions do. When you see politicians arguing and legislation stalling, the machine isn't failing. That friction is the mechanism preventing any single group from seizing absolute control. Over the last 2.5 centuries, the country expanded and faced enormous crises. Alongside that growth, the executive branch rapidly accumulated more authority and scope. During the American Civil War, Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus, the legal right of a citizen to seek relief from unlawful imprisonment. It was a massive expansion of executive power, justified as a wartime necessity. Decades later, Franklin D. Roosevelt concentrated enormous authority during World War II, authorizing the forced relocation and incarceration of Japanese Americans in internment camps. In the 1970s, executive overreach morphed into a direct abuse of power. Richard Nixon utilized government agencies to target political opponents and cover up Watergate. But the constitutional machine is designed to push back. In United States versus Nixon, the Supreme Court ordered the president to surrender his audio tapes, proving the executive branch is bound by the courts. This chart tracks Supreme Court reversals of executive actions across modern administrations. It reveals that over the centuries, the court has ruled against presidents from every political party hundreds of times to curtail executive actions. This failsafe is called judicial review. It ensures that the written constitution, and not the current agenda of any politician, remains the highest authority in the land. The republic has weathered intense internal stress because the structure dictates that no individual, regardless of their popularity or office, is permitted to bypass the constraints of the law. A purely rigid structure eventually snaps under pressure. To survive, the founders included a mechanism for evolution, the constitutional amendment process. It requires massive consensus, 2/3 of Congress and 3/4 of the states to alter the document. These evolutions didn't happen by accident. They were the result of decades of advocacy and legal pressure from citizens who understood the machine well enough to rewire it. Through this process, generations secured voting rights for minorities and women. But mechanical resistance relies on public awareness. Historians warned that if a population no longer recognizes the specific limits of government or loses trust in its institutions, the structural safeguards lose their power to restrain authority. Maintaining the republic requires an educated citizenry, capable of identifying when authority exceeds its designated boundaries. The machinery only functions when participants across the political spectrum respect the rules of the system. The architecture of constraint only exerts power when the people it governs are informed enough to demand that the rules are followed. This has been Wisdom for Your Day. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to the channel by the same name.